Welcome to the Unscripted Blend. I'm your host, Victoria Stackhouse. Today, we're blending the world of high finance with the deeply personal journey of identity. Our guest, Urmi Hossain, is a powerhouse in the financial services industry. She holds two prestigious designations in her field. She is a Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA, and Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst, CAIA. But beyond those numbers and those credentials, Urmi is a speaker, a podcast host, and the author of Discovering Your Identity, a rebirth from interracial struggle. Today, we're talking about her brand of leadership, the challenges women face in the professional world, and why choosing yourself is the most important career move that you'll make. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the blend.
All right, everyone, once again, please welcome our guest, Urmi. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so glad to have you here on the Inscripted Blend.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I was really fascinated with your career and with your background because you're multifaceted. So you can't be put into one box. And that's one of the things that I like about the Inscripted Blend. It actually kind of speaks to the name of my show with having a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you blend it all together. So
hmm
before we get like too deep into what you've been doing in terms of your books and your career in finance, women's empowerment, I want to actually go in this direction. I'm doing a series right now talking about the story behind your brand. And because there's so many different pieces to your brand, I like to approach this first for entrepreneurs who are multifaceted, like you're an author, you're a podcast host, but then you're also a financial professional. And some of these things are just different directions. How do you even begin to work on your brand when it's made up of multiple things?
Yeah, I think it all starts with intention, and it all starts with a clear goal in mind. I'm just gonna be pretty honest about this. When I started doing all of these things, I'm not sure where I was going with all of these things that I'm doing right now. It just started simply with one goal, which was I want to get on a podcast and I want to be a guest on a podcast. That's how simply started for me. But then suddenly it opened up so many doors, so many opportunities, me being invited to speak at conferences, me invited to be part of panel discussions, me like going on these different projects such as, writing books, writing ebooks, being part of like different organizations. And back then I didn't know where it was all starting from, but it got clear, and I got a clear idea right when I was into it. Right when I was into it, I think I understood what I wanted my personal brand to be, how I wanted to be perceived by other people, and the message that I wanted to spread. And so I think I had a much clearer idea afterwards. And I really had to understand like my values. I had to understand what were my strengths. I wanted to understand like what do I want people to know me for if they're like Googling me or if they're like approaching me. And there were always like recurring like themes, women's empowerment, mentorship, being multi-talented, pursuing your passion, self-development, self-growth. And that's the message I want to spread when it comes to my personal brand. But it really simply started with like one goal, and I didn't think it was just going to be all these different goals.
Got it. That's so good. Now, when you mentioned it started with you wanting to be on a podcast, was that to be on a podcast to talk about your book, or was that to talk about something with finance? What was that?
No, and you know what? I didn't even have my book back in the days. I think it
Mhm.
was just to talk about my story as a third culture kid, my migration story, and I felt like it was a good topic to talk about. And also to talk about self-development, which is something that I quite do with myself. And I was like, you know what, let me see where it goes. But it's so funny that you mentioned that, because what happened is I talked about my story as being a third culture kid, my immigration story and things like that. And then suddenly that became the topic of my book, because it was so demanded by all the different podcasters. I was like, okay, this could be, how I can, sell my story, and how I can sell myself. So yeah, then it became the topic of my book.
I love it. And so, since we're talking about the book now, let's hear a little bit more about it. The book, in case you missed it, it's Discovering Your Identity, a Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. Please tell us about your book and really kind of a little bit about your life. You can go into whatever you want to go into.
Yeah, so the book was self-published 4 years ago, and basically it talks about my childhood and my teenagehood as a third culture kid from a perspective of South Asian women. And basically, for those who do not know me, I'm born and raised in Italy, and both of my parents are from Bangladesh. And so I grew up in a very predominant, like Western society, very Italian, and everyone around me was Italian. And in the book, I talk about the struggle that I went through in like fitting in. Like I just felt like from a cultural point of view, I did not fit in the Italian, culture. I did not fit in the Bengali culture because for the Italian culture, I felt like, even though I was born in a Western society, I was born in Italy, I was quite aware that I did not look like everyone else. And then when I went back home, it was the same story. Like I looked like everyone else, but then from the inside, I felt like I was very Italian, very Western. And so there was kind of like me not feeling like I was good enough for either one of the two cultures. And I talk about those experiences in the book, me going to a school that is strictly Italian and, there's like, it's so Catholic. There's crucifixes in the classroom. There were nuns walking at school. There was a church inside. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And I could not understand because I don't even come from the same religion. And so I talk about those things. And, the book was self-published. It took me like 30 days to write it, and then I think it took me an extra 2 weeks to like edit it and format it. And then I was like, okay, this is ready to be published, and I did it, and I was so happy about it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. So I want to ask you this now too. So through navigating through all those struggles, at what point did you start to finally feel like I'm okay? When did you reach that point?
Pretty late. Pretty late in time, very late. Like these are things that happened to me when I was, 15, 16. And then I think when I moved to Canada, it was another struggle because people were asking me, where are you from? And I was like, I'm not sure what to answer. Do I say I'm from Bangladesh? Do I say I'm from Italy? And then people were questioning no matter what answer I was giving. And then afterwards, I think when I was probably closer to 27, 28, I finally like came up with an answer. And I think it was me like openly talking about it, me talking about it with like trusted people, talking to people that are similar to me in terms of like, exposure of different cultures that I finally saw this more like as an asset because I really thought that me having two cultures, two cultural background, it was such a big deal. But I saw this more like as my power and as my storyteller. And so that's how I finally said, no, I should celebrate myself.
Yes. Now, it wasn't in that moment of celebration that you decided, like, hey, I'll make this a book. Like you walked through a lot of things, but then what prompted you to say, let's put this into a book?
Um, you know what? It was actually another author that like prompted me to write my book, and she is someone that I actually invited on my podcast as well. So she is Canadian Pakistani, and she's born in Pakistan. Sorry, she's born in Canada, and she's published her own book. And so when I read her book, I was so shocked and surprised how relatable her story was. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like she's just talking about me. And so I reached out to her and then I said, how did you write your book? So she explained me a little bit and I was like, you know what? If I was able to relate to her story, I'm pretty sure other people would relate to me. And so she was the reason why I started to write my book and then eventually self-publish it.
That's wonderful. And I'm glad you mentioned your podcast. So you have a podcast as well, Stories Beyond Borders, right? So how did that come about? Was that kind of like an extension of your book or like how did that come about?
It's the same theme, I would say. We are like I still talk about cultural like the cultural aspect is like always there. I talk about immigration stories. I talk about being biracial. Like I talk about it's a storytelling podcast where my guests talk about their immigration stories, like why they have moved from one country to another. What was their experience growing in a country that was completely different than their parents' country, for instance? What's their experience like, moving around and being born in one place, studying in another place, going back home. I talk about what is your meaning of home. I talk about how is it to make friends when you have moved around so much. And so it's basically stories about immigrations, and I created that because I wanted to give a platform the same way that I was giving a platform to talk about my story, but this time I wanted to give it to other people to talk about their stories of like moving around, and that's why it's called Stories Beyond Borders. I enjoy it very much, and I think immigration is such an important topic. We just saw the performance of Bud Bunny where he talks about different things, so I was like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, definitely a hot topic right now, and always really. I mean, something that's very important to
Yeah.
discuss. And it's something you said earlier about your story. I would love you to share a little bit more. What is it like having people constantly want to ask you, where are you from? And almost, you really don't owe anybody an explanation, right? But to have people constantly ask you those questions, like, what's it been like navigating those types of challenges?
You know what? I feel like you're always explaining yourself, and it's okay one time, it's okay two times. But after that, you're like, okay, it's the same story that I'm repeating. And I think what bothered me the most, it was people questioning a bit too much about it. Like if I'm telling you I'm from this part of the world, why are you like staring at me thinking that I'm lying? That was the part that I felt it was quite frustrating. And I think the question where you're from is very, very broad. It's so broad. Like it could mean so many things. Now that I've been asked this question so many times. Now I'm like, you know what? You could be a bit more specific about it. Like, it could be more like, what are you born? Where were you born, for instance? I think it's a bit more specific, which could be like the answer could be different from where did you grow up? It could be different from where did you study? Where did you work? What are your parents from? What is your accent from? What does your name mean? Like, I think I prefer when if I would prefer if people were a bit more specific rather than asking too much of a broad question because for me it means so many different things. Does it mean where I was born or does it mean where my parents are from or does it mean where I have lived most of my life? It means so many things, but also to be mindful and to be open-minded about the other person and not judge them or be skeptical about their answers.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. Yeah, not being skeptical about the answers. And I think something else too that right now in culture, people are sort of trying to figure out. It's okay to be curious, want to learn more about cultures, but I think the way people approach it sometimes, like, what's your motive? Do
Yeah.
you really want to know where I'm from, or do you just have or do you just have other concerns about me that are negative? And do you want to see if
Yeah.
I fit those negative stereotypes that you already have? Or do you genuinely want to know, right? And then if you do want to know, maybe we can become friends first, like just instead of just strangers that like, oh, I noticed you seem different from everybody else here. And I don't know, but I think
Yeah.
there can be a balance at some point of maybe genuinely wanting to learn more. But I don't
Yeah.
know. From your experience, does it seem like you've experienced more people being genuine or more people just with kind of like coming from a negative motive? What do you think?
Honestly, I think it was a bit more. I think my issue was that people were just questioning a bit too much at the beginning, but this happened more like at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, and I think also probably I was not good enough at giving a proper answer, probably because I did not have an answer for myself either. Like I wasn't quite sure what to answer. But now, if people ask me that question, I try to keep it quite short and be like, I'm Italian Bengali. I say Italian by birth and Bengali by blood, and then, that could open up other questions, but I keep it quite clear and concise. But I think now my other struggle is that when I'm traveling, people ask me where I'm from, and I'm thinking, are you asking me where I live? And that changes because I live in Canada. So even that, like it adds a layer of complexity for me because I feel like you can say one country, but you're not telling the full story. So that's why you always have to, elaborate a bit more.
Understood. And I will say, we're about to transition to another part, but now from the stories on your podcast, have you found that that's been a similar struggle that others have shared with this whole "where are you from" thing?
Yeah, I think there was the first guest that I had, he also is a third culture kid. So he had, oh my gosh, I don't know how many cultural exposure he had. Like he lived his parents are from one place, like his mother is from one place, his father is from another place, he was born in another place, and then he grew up in another place. Like he's just like he's actually struggling a lot with that. And he actually created a community of people like us so that, they can get together and exchange, traditions and cultural customs and stuff like that. His story was quite similar because he was also saying like, you know, we do not know how to answer that question. And then there's another girl who came on the podcast who also told me like, I don't know how to answer that question. And that's like almost painful, painful to answer that question because I think we just find ourselves explaining too much. And then
Mm.
there was this recent podcast guest that I invited, and she's much older than me. And what I found fascinating was how similar our stories were because she talks about her experience going to school in Quebec. And she's like, I was the only person who looked Indian, then there was no one else that looked Indian like me. And she's like in her 60s, I think. And I'm in my 30s. But I told her that I had the same experience too when I went to school. Like there was no one that looked like me, and I quite struggled with that. So it's nice to see that, we can talk about different times, different periods, but the stories are always the same, very relatable, and we all go through the same thing.
Yeah, and I love that you have also like added to that platform. As you said, some others that come on your show, they have their platform too. But I love that you've added to that. I think it's a conversation to keep having. And I think I like the light that you shed on how sensitive a question that can be. Where are you from? I think again, I suspect that some people don't always have the best intentions, but then you have some, maybe they do, but maybe we should reconsider that
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think everybody's aware of the fact that they can cause someone such pain. And which, by the way, I'm sorry that has happened. And I thank you for even
Don't worry.
sharing. I'm thank you for even sharing that much. But I hope that maybe we can all be a little more, sensitive to that. Like that might not sit right with everyone and land right. So I just want to
Yeah,
say thank
thank
you
you.
for sharing that
Mhm.
piece too. And everyone, check out her podcast as well. I'm excited to listen to some more stories on there too. So now let's pivot because I started this conversation. We were talking a little bit about brands. And again, you have different aspects of your brand. So let's get into the financial side of everything. How did you decide that you wanted to get into the finance area? Can you tell everybody what it is that you do in finance? And let's get
Yeah,
into
I
that.
work I work in the financial sector, and let me tell you this, I'm a proud woman in finance. I um I do enjoy the things that I do, and I very much enjoyed my undergraduate when I was completing my bachelor degree. And let me tell you this, it did it cross my mind to be in finance? No, not at all. I never thought I was going to be in finance. I I was not brought up talking finance. I did not take finance classes at school and everything. And what happened is I like finance used to be my minor, and then I took one class. I just fell in love with it. It became my major, and ever since, like, I stayed married to finance. And I always say it was love at first sight. I very much enjoy the things that I do. I work in wealth management, and it's my 9 to 5, which I of course combine with my 5 to 9. This is where I explore my creative side. But I do very much enjoy doing that. It's part of my one of my passions. And I was just having a conversation with someone prior. They were like, how would you describe your ratio between work and life? And I said it's 50-50. I give equal importance to my day to job as much as I give it to my 5 to 9.
I love that. So now, has it been challenging at times to navigate that world as a woman? Because I know you do a lot with mentorship and women's empowerment. So what has that been like for you navigating the finance world?
Yeah, I definitely seek a lot of mentorship and a lot of guidance, especially in finance. I think it's important. It's important to learn from other people and to get their perspective. And I think, like you said, when you work in a very male-dominated industry, sometimes you do need a little bit of more help to understand how do I do some of the things. So, having allies, looking for people that advocate for you, doing coffee chats, the more you speak with people, the more you will understand how to navigate some things, whether, there are challenges or maybe there are opportunities to grow. Like I think it's always to have those conversations. And I'm very, very big when it comes to mentorship. Like I have mentors myself. I had mentors myself, but I mentor as well, and I mentor women who want to work and study in finance. I think we need to give them a bit more guidance because they're going to be the future.
Absolutely. So, can you give us a little snippet? What's some of the guidance that you do give to women who are just entering that space?
A lot of them, it's a lot of their advices are very much related to, like I want to get a job in finance. I don't know where to start, for instance, or maybe some other tips could be in relation to, I want to get on this project at work, but I don't know where to start. And so I try to like share a lot from my own personal experience, and a lot of the things are also in relation to I want to do different things, but I don't know where to start. And I want to, there's this girl that I'm mentoring right now. She's just so driven, so motivated. She wants to do everything. And I'm like, let's just start with one by one. And I try to, give her like resources or ways that she can, like, let's say, speak to her managers if she wants to, get on a certain role, if she wants to get on a position, promotion. I try to share from my personal experience. And I think one thing that I'm very big on is like, there is your job, but it's okay to explore other opportunities and pursue your passions. Like I'm big on that. I think that there is your job, but I think there is also much more than your day-to-day job. And I think you can find a lot of fulfillment when you find the right thing that works for you and the right hobby.
That's awesome. That's good advice. So, I hope you took notes if you wanted some advice there. So, I'm going back a bit and talking about the mentorship, and now let's look at leadership. So, you are the co-chair of Women in Leadership in Montreal. So, can you tell us what that group is about, what they do, who you serve?
Yeah, so Women in Leadership, it's an organization that is based in Canada. And this year we're celebrating 25 years, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, 25 years. And what's nice about it is that you have the foundation, but then each city has its chapter. So there is one in let's say in Toronto, there is one in Vancouver, there is one in Calgary, there is one in Montreal, and each chapter does its own thing. And but we're all working for the same mission, the same purpose, which is to empower the women in the communities that we serve. And so we do a lot of networking events, we do a lot of social events, we do a lot of things in relation to wellness, and we do a lot of webinars, and there's also a mentorship program. So it's very much like heavily focused in building like female leaders, and we provide them with those like resources for them to be the leaders they are meant to be. And in Montreal, yes, I'm the co-chair. We are a team of four incredible women, and we are currently working on launching an event for International Women's Day. And so we want to like bring a panel session, we want to have a brunch, and we want to like bring women together to, network and learn from each other. So I'm very excited, honestly, very excited.
All right, I'm excited about that too. So people keep up with you so we can see more about those events. That'd be good. But although this particular organization you said is based in Canada, and is it open to others outside of Canada or not yet? And
So you can definitely participate to the webinars and things that we do from anywhere in the world. For in-person events, you just have to fly over. So yeah.
all right, so good. That's good to know. So that sounds very exciting. So now the next question I want to ask you again. We've talked about your podcast and your book, and then we've talked about a little bit about what you do in terms of women in leadership and your mentorship and your career in finance. So now I also wanted to look at too, how do you merge all of these worlds, right? Again, when we're looking at the big brand, and somebody says, "What do you do?" How have you kind of learned to answer that question? Because you do a few different things, right?
Yeah, you know what? And that too could be a lengthy answer sometimes because I'm like, yeah, I do a bunch of things, but I try to use one sentence, which is, I'm a woman who wears many hats.
Mm,
That's how I like to describe myself. And I don't like to choose one. thing only because I am, like you said, very multifaceted, and I think I do have different skills and different roles, and I think like saying I'm a woman who wears many hats is what describes me the most. And like you said, I think there is my there are two different worlds right now. There's my creative side, and there's the other side, which is a bit more rigid and structured. I keep them separate, to be honest. I think I don't like to have them. I don't like them to be combined, but and then in the middle there is me who comes in and brings them together. But they're quite separate. They don't even like overlap in terms of things. The only thing that I can say is that the discipline aspect or the rigidity that comes from my 9 to 5, I'm able to apply it in my creative side, because in my creative side, you are the one who's building your own schedule. You're doing everything on your own. But I also can say that I'm able to bring my expressive side that I get, my self-expression that I get from my creative side, I bring it to my 9 to 5. So I'm able to use some of the skills in like in each other's world, basically.
Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to ask that question because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs feel like we kind of might find ourselves in that position. Like you're not always in one industry. Some people are, some people tech might be their thing and their 9 to 5 is tech, and their 5 to 9 is tech. But then sometimes you branch off into different worlds. And so speaking of that, what is your advice for someone who you're still working the 9 to 5, but then you also are an entrepreneur, you're also a content creator. What's your advice for navigating the challenges that come with that?
So here's the thing. I think for me, it's very important that you cultivate yourself outside of your 9 to 5. And I think that there is something that if you are curious about something, to try it out and see if it's fit for you. Like you just mentioned content creation, and I think it's okay to be a content creator if it's something that you're passionate about, but I would say to be consistent with it, and to stick with it, and to do one thing only to start with. I think that when it comes to entrepreneurship and so forth, it's a trial and error. Like you have to try different things to figure out what's good and what's not good. And I think you have to start with one thing just to like test the waters and see like if do I like it, do I not like it? Is this aligned with what I want to do eventually? Because even for me, like it started with blogging, and I remember I did it for like a good 3, 4 years, but then eventually I let it go because I was like, it's not serving any purpose. And so it's important to like start small, start with one thing, and to always be consistent with whatever brand you're trying to build. Like your message has to be consistent with no matter what platform you're using. There cannot be any how can I say, like you cannot say one thing on one platform and say something completely different in another one, because then you as a person are giving the wrong message to the people.
Mm. That's good. That's actually something good to take away from that because even if you are multifaceted, even if you different have different aspects about you, your core message should still be the same. So I
That's
think
it.
that's good. Yeah, that it should still all connect. So I like that. You don't want to show up and say one thing over here, something
Yeah.
completely different over there. So consistency, yeah, is the key. Yeah, I really like that. You did say something else earlier when we were talking. You mentioned some public speaking that you do as well, and just overall, just looking at your background, your career. Super impressed. So my question now is, what's your drive to just go after everything? You have a lot of confidence, and it pretty much seems like whatever comes to your mind to do, like you're just going to pursue it and you pursue it well. So where does that drive come from?
I'm not sure.
That's okay.
I'm not sure. I think I'm just very self-driven. I'm very
Yeah,
self-motivated.
that's good.
I and like you said, if there is something I want to do, I'm just gonna go till the end. I'm a go-getter.
We can see that. It's awesome because like you're on a lot of podcasts right now as well. So that's kind of what made me think about that too. But you've done so many things, and I love the way you really have you've created your own lane, and
I
you're
did.
going full steam ahead. And so I guess as we get ready to wrap up, for the woman who might be afraid to get started, for the woman who has a lot of questions, like what's your advice to the woman who feels stuck right now? Like she knows she's got potential. She knows there's some things she wants to do, but she just feels stuck. What would you say to her?
I think the first place starts from self-trust and self-belief. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can do it. You have to believe in the endless possibilities. I think that you know you're capable of achieving anything, but if you don't believe in yourself, you can't do that. And as someone, let's say you have a friend coming to you for an advice, what would you tell them? You probably, who's probably going through the same thing, you probably will tell them you can do it, and you have to do the same thing to yourself. And there is a practical thing that I have done that I still do is a positive self-affirmation. Whenever I'm like afraid or something or struggling, I just write it down that I can do it, and my brain automatically thinks the same way. So that's how I'm able to, achieve, like go through the day and achieve my things.
Thank you. That's good. So I hope that you guys took that in. If people want to stay connected with you, how should they do that?
Yes, so I have my LinkedIn profile called Urmi Hossain. I also have my YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. My podcast is called Stories Beyond Borders, and it's available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And with the same name, I also have an Instagram account, and people can follow me there as well.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Make sure everyone go follow her, stay connected. Big things are continuing to come down the road. I love the opportunity to connect with other women in entrepreneurship. Like it's really important to me. Other women in leadership, women's empowerment is passionate for me as well. So I love that we had this chance to connect today. And thank you for coming on here.
Thank you.
I truly hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Urmi. If her journey inspired you, you can find her book, Discovering Your Identity, linked in our show notes. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling empowered to own your space, especially in those rooms where you feel like you're the only one. Now, let's stay connected beyond this episode. Join my email list, The Blend, to get early access to new episodes, practical and creative brand strategies for your business, and exclusive invites to events in the Unscripted Blend universe. You can find all of that, the sign-up link to her book, in the show notes. Thank you for tuning into the Unscripted Blend podcast. And listen, keep embracing your story. I'll see you at the next one.